Hi, folks. Welcome to Smart Living. Well, I'm excited. I'm kind of pivoting a little bit out of my box, but I have Ken Clark, who actually used to be with the House of Representatives. He was in the legislation. He actually created laws for our state back in, was it 2015 to 2019?
Two different times.
Okay.
I was in the legislature, first elected in 2002, but I only stayed one term. And then I came back in 2014 and lost a primary in 2018.
And who did you lose that to?
There are two House seats per district. So
Okay.
I lost to two people, Shaw and Longdon.
Okay.
Yeah. So there two other people got elected, and then there was one opening. So yeah.
And they're both gone now. They're both not in
They're
office.
both gone. Here's the thing that people need to know. I try to tell budding politicians, like, don't let your ego get ahead of you, because you are just as temporary as everything else. And the Arizona legislature is like the minor leagues of baseball. There's a lot of people who are not that great at it, but a lot of big egos.
Oh, yes, very much so, which leads to the reason why you're here. So Ken and I met actually at a protest because I'm, very bothered with this political environment, and I very much so, and I would consider myself an average citizen of average education in terms of knowledge and politics. And Ken and I just happened to meet with a mutual friend and had a great conversation. And one of the reasons why I asked him to be on the show was he did a great job at explaining how things work and what we can do to do actionable items. Now, if anybody follows me, you know I am all about wokeness, which means empathy and compassion. I am all about caring for citizens, and I shall not ever take from somebody who has less than me. So I'm all about that, and all difference. I love variety. So the more variety, the more interesting it is. So Ken, thank you for coming on and taking the time to educate us and letting us know what we can do. So let's start out, give you a little bit of background. Now, you said you were in the legislature twice, but I want to know what led you into politics, and what do you feel that has kind of changed about politics? Because it feels kind of sour right now.
Yeah. And I was hooked on politics because my father was in the Air Force and we were stationed overseas. And I'm old enough that I was in high school at the very tail end of the Cold War. So I saw from Germany and Holland everything having to do with the Cold War. I went to East Berlin. I have a piece of the Berlin Wall at my house. I was hooked. And I believed, and have always believed, that if we want to protect our democracy, we have to be active. We have to go to those boring meetings. We have to support actual journalism, not a bunch of, some of the crap that's out there now.
Content creator nonsense, some of it.
Yeah.
There's some good content creators out
there. Look,
that are
I think you have to, if your source of news doesn't have an editor, fact checkers, and a retractions page, then you need to really get that into your diet. Listen to podcasts. Listen to this is great. But this is opinion, and we have to be very clear about that.
Right. Yes, this is 100% opinion.
100% opinion. But people don't know that distinction, and that distinction, frankly, was muddied by Fox News starting in 1996
100%.
by design.
Mm-hmm.
And so now the whole thing's a mess, and we've got to start over. But anyway, so that's not what you asked about. How did I get into this?
But still, so you're seeing that things are becoming a mess. You're seeing the end of the Cold War. Like, you're still answering the question. You're getting
You're right. So I was hooked. I did the whole Model United Nations thing, all those kinds of nerdy stuff that people like me did, and just always wanted to participate in some way. Wasn't certain that I wanted to run for office until I moved back to Arizona from overseas. There's some intervening time overseas, but I won't go into it. But I came back here in 1998 and started getting involved in politics and just decided to go for it. And very shockingly found myself in the legislature. I didn't really expect to win the first time. And I wasn't really prepared to be there financially. And so I only stayed for one term.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you mean financially, like, it doesn't pay much is what you're saying, but it takes a lot of time?
It pays $24,000 a year plus per diem, which can get you up to like 30.
So which leads me to another interesting question. So, like, what was it? Like, you're going for a job that pays you nothing and causes you a lot of aggravation. So why would you do that?
Because I believe that we have to participate in our democracy. I have times of pessimism and optimism, I think that when I'm feeling optimistic is when I end up finding myself running for stuff, because I've always believed that people, when given good information, can make the right decision. I don't know that I believe that anymore because people don't want to hear accurate information. But that's another story. So
well, that's a story we're going to have to touch base on because disinformation is important.
Right.
So let's talk about, just quickly, for like the average person that's like, sitting at home watching the news or scrolling through social media and like, oh my God, Elon did this, or oh my God, did it. Explain to us the power of government versus state government. So let's start out with state government, if you don't mind. Now, let's specifically Arizona. Now, we have a governor that's a Democratic governor. Now, Democrats usually often believe in lifting up society, where Republicans are more about the purse, keeping the money in the purse. That's the distinction for me.
Right.
So we have a governor that's a Democrat, but the legislation, that includes the Senate, the House of Representatives.
Yeah. The legislature is made up of the Senate and the House.
Okay.
They create legislation.
Which is legislation means
people
laws.
Get the words mixed up. I was not a legislator. I'm a legislation. I was a legislator.
Okay.
Right? So we create legislation. Legislators create legislation.
Okay.
So the legislature is made up of the Senate and House. In Arizona, we have 30 districts. 30 Senate districts and 60 House districts. 60 House members. We have 30 districts total.
Right.
Each district has one senator and two House members.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that the same way for the government too? When we're talking national, is that the same makeup? Okay.
Oh, no.
Hold on. Let's stay on state level. I don't want to digress. Okay. So you have that, and those three people that represent 30 different districts throughout the state.
Yeah.
When you say legislation, I want to break it down.
Yeah.
Legislation means laws, right?
It means proposed laws.
Okay. And then so you were part of that. You were part of the group of people that propose laws that run our state.
Yes.
Okay. So it's very important. That's a powerful position.
Not really.
Okay.
So it depends on how you look at it. So let's see, when I was there, we had roughly 25 out of 60 seats were held by Democrats. And there were roughly, let's just say there were a little over 1,000 bills that were introduced every year. Only about 4 or 5 of those were allowed through the process if they had a Democrat on the bill.
Okay.
So the Republicans refused to let Democrats even get hearings on their bills.
And this is still going on.
Oh, yeah. Now, if you go to a Democratic leaning state, it's the inverse.
Right.
And that's why I've always proposed things like ranked choice voting, and we can get into that some other time. But ranked choice voting and redistricting that allows for greater competition. But we have a system that is so flawed because one party or the other dominates, and then you don't get to hear the voices of the other side.
Which is exactly what's been going on
Right.
in our legislation. We've been at a deadlock. Although we have a Democratic governor, nothing is going to get through because we have a Republican-dominated legislation.
Yeah, legislature.
I'm sorry. Thank you for. But this is good. This is why I had you
I don't want to
on.
mansplain.
It's not mansplaining.
I'm very
you're
cognizant
educating,
of that.
and I wanted to make sure that we're getting the terms right. So no, I welcome that correction. Thank you, Ken. Okay, we have to get things right here, because we wouldn't be in this situation if people didn't get things right in that scenario. Right. So because of that, we're not going anywhere. So it's basically a deadlock. So you have the Republican legislature going against.
So you're talking about the individuals, the Republican legislators,
right?
In the legislature, making legislation,
right? But nothing's passing because they're trying to get laws through, and then the governor, who's a Democrat, says no. So we have Republicans trying to pass laws, and the Democrats saying no because why? I mean, why aren't these laws passing?
Because they're many of the bills that they pass are designed to embarrass her and make her look bad. So there's this whole game going on.
Yes.
Right. And she's going to vote no on them. I mean, or they're obviously, or just against what she believes.
Right.
I'll give you a great case in point. Arizona has a huge water problem, and it has because I don't think we've ever taken it seriously enough. You have one person in the legislature who is the chair of the Natural Resources Committee.
Who is that?
Gail Griffin
Okay.
from Southern Arizona, Cochise County. She has a very particular view of how to handle water policy, and it's like hands off the government completely, almost completely. And as a result, and of course, when you do that with water, everyone's mining the crap out of water. And this is groundwater is mining. It's not coming back. It's a finite amount. All right. So Gail Griffin, she refuses to hear anything. So Katie Hobbs, who I've known for a long time, I'm Democrat. One of her major policy priorities as governor is to upgrade and update our water policy in this state so that we can conserve more, so that we can recycle more, and that we can do more long-term planning. And Gail Griffin believes, well, water's a property right, and don't touch my property rights. And the market will take care of it. Now, as I think we would probably agree, when it comes to things around the environment, or what we often call the tragedy of the commons issues, the market is not really good at that. Not good at managing that.
No, and people aren't good at self-regulating themselves either. That's why we have laws.
Yeah, there you go.
You can't run rampant. Yeah, and I will say that, this podcast is opinion. I mean, you and I are both Democrats in our beliefs, and we, are very, compassionate, empathetic, kind, factual people. So I just want to say there's a bias here, but we believe in truth.
Right.
So our views are, I'm very much so an environmentalist. I very much so think about preserving. There are a lot of people that don't believe in that,
Right.
and a lot of them are in power right now too. And so we are such at a
loggerheads.
It's like we've created this divisiveness where nothing can get done. And the thing about it is that makes it so sad is that the reason why we have government is to take care of our citizens. But instead what we're having is like a high school fight amongst all of these powerful people. And we're the ones that are going to suffer the consequences of those people's actions.
Yep. The founding fathers wanted to create a government where nobody could have ultimate control.
Yes.
Okay. Obviously, someone's trying to do that right now.
Yes.
Elon. So,
Trump.
But we've taken it too far, right? We've taken a system where you were supposed to have checks and balances, and now we have just sand in the gears. That sand comes from completely absent campaign finance laws. Members of the of Congress, at least, who have like this, they've abdicated their role to police the president. And they're allowed to do all kinds of things that normal people would object to.
Yes,
right?
100%.
And, of course, the corporate interests and even union interests. You've got these outside interests who can come in and basically buy votes. It is legalized corruption.
Yes,
right?
it is. Elon spent $250 million on this election. He is now running this country, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. But even before Elon.
Yes.
If you wanted to, lobbyists will go in and they'll basically fund all these campaigns and all these political action committees, and it gets us nowhere.
It's like we need people who have ethics and morals and have a hard line, like Sassoon from the Attorney General that resigned because she didn't want to acquiesce to their corruption. We're getting a little sidetracked here in that, but it's hard. This is a really tough time in our world right now.
And the solutions are at the ground level.
Right, and that's
solutions
great. Actionable items.
My party has hollowed out. They've failed, in my opinion.
I agree.
So what it means is that you find that activity in your very local community to have your voice heard and push back and demand campaign finance reform, demand that lobbyists have less interest in the government, that corporations are not people, that one of the most absurd rulings will go down in history is Citizens United that said corporations are people. Corporations should not be deciding the direction of our elections, period.
No, not at all. And so I agree with you on that. So one of the reasons why we met is because we have actionable items that we're coming with, and we could talk a little bit about joining a group. If you're somebody that is just sitting at home and you're festering and you just are somebody that's like, I have to do something with this negative energy. I'm one of those people. So it has been a savior for me to get myself involved in community. And, I want to very much so involved in the Black community. I'm a Black American citizen here. I'm very much so in community events that will empower women, especially young women. That's what I'm all about. And then also just protecting citizens, LGBTQ, trans, Hispanics, Latino, Blacks, anybody other than white men. No offense to you, Ken, but I'm just saying that seems to be what we're trying to protect.
Man. I'm set. I've got all the privilege. I know where my privilege comes from.
But you understand it and you put it into action. So I thank you for that. There's a difference.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a big
difference. And there are a couple things that intimidate people and make it hard for them to get involved. And if I could break those down.
Yeah, please.
I like to tell people, if you've ever played fantasy football or you've followed some like Game of Thrones or something like that, there is nothing in state government that is more complicated than those things. You just have to get involved in terms of public policy. You have to take the time to learn. Now, that's difficult because learning about what's going on in politics is like being dropped in season 3 of this very complicated
reality
story,
show, right?
Yeah, with all these moving parts and all these characters and their backstories. It sucks. It's difficult. But there are groups that help you understand more about how things work. So if you want your government to work, if you want to protect your own rights and the rights of the people you care about, you don't have a choice. That's the way the system is designed.
You have to educate yourself.
We have to
engage.
do it.
Yeah.
And like I said before, you try and focus on sources of information that are replicatable, that based on science, that you can prove. Okay, so having said all that, where were we going with this?
So we were talking about actionable items.
Oh, actionable items.
What can you do to make yourself feel better during this very chaotic time in our country?
Yeah. I think there are two things. First, don't doom scroll. It's very easy to do. I've been doing it.
Yep. So don't get on social media and start scrolling because
right.
it will create a lot of anxiety.
Right. That's the number one thing. The number two, get out in real life and be with people in groups that are working on things you care about.
Yes.
And that's the best starting point in this complicated web. If you care about pets, if you care about human rights, if you care about environmental stuff, my entry point is always the environment. So voting rights, all of this. Find the thing that speaks to you and you'll find the meetings to go to.
Right, and then find your people.
And find your people. Hang out with these people. And that has a benefit. It gets you out from behind the computer, off your phone. And we know social media is bad for our psychology, right?
So bad.
Real people are good for our psychology.
Yes.
It's good for our mental health. So get out and be with them. And the rest, as they say, do a good job at what's in front of you, and the rest will take care of itself. That's your first step. Don't stress about the details. Just go find a group.
Yeah, and also I'm going to recommend, I always say stop watching the sausage being created. So from a government standpoint, what the Trump administration is doing is creating so much chaos that nobody can keep up on it. Right. So you have to be engaged, but not engaged in that nonsense because that's distracting, that's confusing, that's stressing. Yeah. So perfect advice, focus on the things that really matter to you.
If I could push back on a little bit, and I think we need to distinguish between sausage being made and intentional confusion being sown by Trump. If let's say you get involved because you care about human rights, equality, and you start joining a group that's working on that, eventually you're going to be in some way interfacing with the government, or you might hear about a piece of legislation that's going through and you need to know how to engage with that. That's the sausage being made. Don't be intimidated by it. Take a little bite of a sausage at a time and you'll get there.
Okay.
You'll get to that. This other thing that is relatively new and insidious coming from the Trump administration and the MAGA movement is intentionally misleading people about how things work.
Yeah.
You take any news item, you take a little kernel of truth, and you turn it into something that's not there at all.
And people believe it.
Yeah. I can't think of something right now, but there are plenty of instances where
we could talk about Elon Musk and how his Doge has saved the government tons of money. They had to recorrect that. He lied. He said 800 billion versus 800 million. Like, come on, man.
It was absolutely wrong. So, and here's a good example. I was on the phone with somebody this morning who was talking about how wasteful government is. And you've got all these researchers that are out there studying things that don't matter to anybody. And I had said, no, hold on a second. You may or may not know that Ozempic, which is a huge issue for people, helping them lose weight and eat right and all that, that came from the study of some weird tropic. I can't remember exactly what it is. You can look it up.
Right.
It was from some kind of like toad or the mating habits of some birds or something like that. They discovered how Ozempic can work. So, yeah, it sounds silly, but those are not the programs you need to worry about because they are really relatively a small part of the budget.
Yes.
If you want a conspiracy, you don't need to hear about Pizzagate and all these things that sound like they should be on a movie. The conspiracy is right in front of you. Corporations over the last 50 years have slowly infused themselves into government so that you have less voice and they have more. The conspiracy's right in front of your face. If you want to talk about saving money in the budget, it's not the little research programs or the attempt to try and help farmers save energy when they're farming to reduce carbon emissions. What you need to be looking at is the big stuff, the huge, massive tax cuts, hundreds of billions of dollars of tax cuts overall in this tax structure that is full of holes and loopholes. The fossil fuel industry, check me, but I want to say they get about $30 billion for the tax cuts every year. That's more than Elon Musk saved by gutting staff out of USAID and the Forest Service and all these things.
So gross.
So go look at where the big money is. There's a reason they're going after these small departments. It's not because it's good policy or it's a good process that's going to save us money. It's because they ideologically don't like those departments. And you know what? If you ideologically don't like those departments, take your ass over to Congress and make the case that Congress, who created those departments, should change them.
Right, but we're not doing that. We're breaking laws.
They're not doing. They're breaking laws.
This is what happened when you vote. We voted a criminal into presidency. I mean, that's a fact. He is a criminal, and so we're going to rule our country like we are criminals.
Yeah, exactly.
So actionable items.
Yes.
I want to talk about that a little bit.
Right.
So what we can do is we can sit down and we can spend hours, and we are going to spend the next 4 years of our lives talking about all the things that are going on.
Right.
But what we have to do is what are the things that we can do as citizens to protect ourselves and to make sure that we can educate ourselves. So number one is listen to this podcast. Number two is an app called 5 Calls. I want to talk about that. And you know, every time we have a meeting, I talk about that. 5 Calls to me is the solution to, I think, what is a big problem. And I'm one of them. I just love to live my life and live, under a rock, the things that just matter to me. That's all I want to focus on. But when I hear something about on a government level that's taking away something from poor people or people that don't deserve to be, targeted, then I want to do something. So 5 Calls is an app that allows you to be not that smart or not that connected with things. Right. So you hear about something, you open up the app, you can it'll have every single issue that you could possibly think of. You click on it, it explains it to you in layman terms. You can be of a first grade reading level. It's not that hard to interpret. They break it down into simple words. Then when you're done quickly reading just one paragraph and you have a good understanding of what's going on, it gives you an actionable item in the app. So you don't even have to leave or do any research. So say, okay, well, you want to complain about this? Call this person. It'll tell you your representatives. Right. Before you even start the app, it gives you your zip code. So bottom line is that this app allows you to be disengaged but engaged without putting much effort, and it gives you actionable items. So then when it says something like to call Ruben Gallego or David Schweikart, it gives you the number to call. You call directly, and it gives you a script. So you just read exactly what it says. Right. So you're not nervous, sounding like you're not sounding educated, and all of this. And it's called 5 Calls because they encourage you to make 5 calls a day and share it with your friends. And I've been spreading this like crazy. I've called
That's
every
great.
local station because I'm using my connection with being on local news in the past to
Right.
get the word out.
Yep.
And so these are the things that work for me. Another actionable item that I have found that also helps is a group called Indivisible.
Yep.
Right? And I know you're going to be chatting with them later on. Indivisible has been kind of a grassroots organization that has grown exceptional in just 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it is congressional.
So Indivisible actually got its start in 2016 was Trump was elected the first time. And then they kind of went a little dormant. And then since this new election, they've really kicked it up.
And it was for some young congressional workers that worked in the White House.
Yes. Yep.
So they really understand how things work, and they're really against what they're seeing. Like,
Right.
We had hopes of Trump being a wonderful president in 2016, and he disappointed a lot of people with his corruption ways. And so this is like kind of almost like young people, I feel, that are behind this.
Yeah.
But not only, if you go to indivisible.org, they have a wonderful guide that taught me so much. And every day it breaks down like, no. You're hearing about this in the news, but here's what's really going on.
Right.
Indivisible has been so soothing to making me feel like it's bad, but it's not as bad as what we feel it is.
Right.
But it also gives me a sense of control. Like, no. This like thing about this, they're just saying this, and it's going to take 4 months of fighting, but we have to be present and do this.
And stay in their faces. Yeah.
Love this organization, and they're developing little groups within, your communities and areas. And so I really like this group. Plus, we also have a lot of groups where there's resistance groups where, people are calling to action. So I'm part of some groups, I won't go into too much, where I'm a call to action person. So basically, I'm a call to action. If there's a protest, you might see me show up. It makes me feel good to show up.
Yeah.
I love being around.
That's the mental health part.
Yes, and that's what I didn't realize about going to protests. A protest isn't about so much protesting for me. It's about being around people that I know I'm going to be welcomed and I feel safe.
For me, it's about laughing at oligarchs, laughing at autocracy. They don't like being laughed at. Trump is just a little snowflake. He's just got no skin. His skin is as thin as the tan stuff that he puts on. right?
Yes.
If I could yes and real quick, rewind and then yes and your comment about 5 calls. It's amazing. It's relatively new. I love how well it's working. The average member of Congress was getting 40 calls an hour traditionally. Now they're getting 1,400.
Yes.
So
that's how we make an impact. We screen.
But here's the yes and part. When you go down that list and you find the thing that you're interested in, don't leave it there because that's still way too passive. What I do to kind of reward myself for doing a little quote unquote research, which sounds like work, is I decide what I want to go read up on. And I go to a locally owned coffee shop.
Yep, locally owned.
Not supporting Starbucks.
No corporations right now.
No corporations right now. Locally owned locally owned coffee shop. And just like give myself some time on a Saturday or Sunday. And just like peruse. You don't it's not like you have a report due.
Right.
That your teacher's going to grade. Go and just like find an article about it and go, that's interesting. Be curious. Oh, let me find this other article about it. Let me hear both sides about it. And before you know it, you're going to know more than most people in this country.
Yes.
And you're going to have done it in a fun way. You got a little lemon cake with your coffee over at your coffee shop, and you look at the pretty people coming in. To me, that's a wonderful Saturday.
Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of that way too.
Yeah.
We're sitting outside because the weather's great.
Yeah.
But that's it. And that's the thing is that, self-care is okay too. And, listen, it's been 8 years of this division because what I feel Trump has done, it's not about politics. Trump made us talk about who you are as a person. And a lot of people who I greatly loved and respected revealed themselves of who they are and what matters to them.
Yeah.
And the things that matter to them don't matter to me as much.
Right.
My hard line is never going to be money. My hard line is always going to be humanity.
James Baldwin
Yes.
said
Oh,
we can.
wisest James.
Yeah, I know, right?
love him.
He said we can disagree on policy, but we can't disagree on human rights. We can't agree to disagree on human rights. I'm paraphrasing. It was a great quote that he's so much more eloquent. But that's the thing. Like, so we're confronted by people who, through this kind of crazy web of information, disinformation and propaganda, have come to believe that we don't need to take care of equality. We don't need to take care of voting rights. We gutted the Voting Rights Act, right, over the last 20 years, because there's a mythology that, oh, we're just going to live in a meritocracy. Trump likes to say this. I'm going to create a meritocracy. Really, dude? Because you put some of the most meritless people on your cabinet, and it is objectively true.
Yes.
So you don't really want a meritocracy. There's the lie, right? So
Anybody who doesn't see that, it's really hard, because you and I see exactly what's been going on from day one, and it's so hard when somebody that you love so much has that cognitive dissonance. Like, for example, my family members have voted for Trump. I'm a black female in this country. My daughter is a black female in this country. Diversity, equity, and inclusion was created so we could have the same opportunities as people that don't look like us.
Right.
And now you're taking that away because you felt that that wasn't okay, but yet you still have more wealth than anybody else in this country. And I'm referring to white Americans in this country. It's still a disparity because we've taken away people's money, their finance. You took it away, and then you took away freedom, and then all of a sudden, like, we have just a few years of 50 years of having equal rights, and now you're taking it away. It's outrageous.
And the thing is, like, equal rights and economic rights is not a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
But these people think it is. I'm loving watching the FAFO videos, the F around and find out videos.
You're scrolling, Ken.
I know. Not today, I'm not. So you've had these white women who lost their jobs,
Yeah.
and they voted for Trump, and they are a DEI hire.
Yep.
You know what? Like, the 40% of the people who work in the federal government who are veterans are DEI hires.
Right.
So here's where I differ with some of my I don't know, fellow liberals on how to handle FAFO. They want to just say, fine, you get it. You left around, you're going to find out I have no empathy for you.
No.
It's
Nope.
not going to work.
Nope. We have to have empathy.
You have to have empathy. You have to have compassion. You have to meet them where they are and say, I'm really sorry that your son lost his job with
Yes.
the USDA.
Because you are.
That's terrible. Let's talk about how we can fix that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about getting you accurate information about what the USDA actually does. And that's the opening. I got into some debate with somebody about it, and I was reminded, I can't remember the dude's name. I went and looked it up, and now I don't remember. He was the black guy who befriended the KKK.
Oh, yeah,
dudes.
there was a movie on it.
Is it McKay or something
I
like that?
forget his name, but I saw the movie the documentary that they made of it. It was a beautiful story.
That's the challenge. That's the goal. Now, am I good at it? Heck no. I come from a conservative family. There are not many people left of that original conservative family. There are some that have gone liberal, but the ones that, I gave up trying to talk to these people years ago. I saw my parents, who used to be center right, pro-choice, gun questioning, I guess, gun skeptic Republicans, just slide and slide and slide to the point where they were convinced that schools were handing out abortions in schools.
None of this.
That Al Gore was a fraud, and just it's just the talking points right out of Fox News.
Yeah, Fox News.
Right. So I don't want to go down a path of Fox News, but
Fox News
at a
isn't
certain
news.
point, I gave up. Now they've passed; they're not around anymore. And I look back at my life, and I'm like, God, I wish I would have had the tools.
Yeah.
Better tools 20 years ago to have the patience to start working. Like, no, like what they're saying is not accurate. Let's take a breather. Let's go this direction. Let's look at this document. I don't have that patience.
Well, I don't
wish
think I have the
did.
bandwidth anymore, but
Yeah.
I will continue to put information out for people. Here's another site that I want to mention, and we probably should wrap this up because we've gone over 30 minutes here. So Snopes.com. It's a great website that I use. I teach classes throughout the community, and one of the classes I teach at retirement communities is about scams and avoiding scams.
good.
And that gives me an opportunity to let these, because there's so much propaganda, so much false information. Snopes is a solid website for checking out facts. You can check out political stuff, you can check out rumors, you can check out everything, and they debunk it. And they are nonprofit. There's no motivation for them but to simply educate you.
And PolitiFact.
Right. PolitiFact is another great one. And I'm going to tell you something. If something doesn't sound right, do the research. So here's an example. I had a very dear friend of mine, and it's hard for me to talk about this because I greatly, greatly, greatly love this woman. We trained for a marathon together, and one day we had a conversation during the election where I called her, I was checking on her, she'd lost her job, and I just wanted to see how she's doing because I'm empathetic. And in that conversation, she goes, "Oh my God, I can't believe the Democrats are controlling the weather." And I went on the phone, I'm like, I've never known her to be a conspiracy theory, but this is somebody that I respect and has a college education, who's highly educated, critical thinking I've seen before happen. So I hear this and I'm like, wait, what? And so it didn't sound right to me. So I went to Snopes.com, Googled it. Absolutely not. That was wrong information. But what she did was she was scrolling and she got caught up in that. Now let's
Did
back
you share
up
that with her?
Yeah. I said, let's back up that. If Democrats really could control the weather, as much as Democrats don't like Trump or his administration, don't you think they would do something with Mar-a-Lago by now? I mean, these are the things that you have to ask yourself. And that's what critical thinking means. What critical thinking simply means is question it until you find the real
Absolutely.
answer.
The challenge we're up against is the other side has been so effective at calling reality into question. Snopes and PolitiFact are just tools of the left.
Yeah.
Don't believe them. Or critical thinking really means that you're going to apply, I don't know, God's word to God's literal writing in the Bible
Woke
to
means
this
empathy.
situation. Right.
Woke means empathy.
Right. Well, right. I know. Oh, so their way of they take the term critical thinking and say you're only critical thinking if you're saying what we want you to say.
Right. Yes, exactly.
That's not critical.
No, critical thinking is question things. Like, I mean, I was always that kid in school where my teacher was like, "Daphne, you need to be quiet and sit down." Well, instinctually, I'm like, "But why?" That was always the question I always asked.
Can I give you
why?
an example as a callback here? So critical thinking. They'll say, well, you need to think critically about the role of USAID. Why is it even out there? We don't need those people. And people say, oh, I'm critical thinking. And then they pair it. We don't need USAID. They don't look into the fact that USAID every year, by funding contraception around the world, by funding health services around the world, prevent diseases from coming to the United States. There's a purpose for these things.
Oh my God.
And if you want to dig into it, you'll find out what those purposes are.
Right. But we're going to find out. And that's the thing, is that no matter what, this administration will touch all of us on some way level.
Yeah.
And I just hope it just doesn't ruin the freedom of this country, because I really enjoyed being born in 1971. And the moment that I came out of my mommy's body, I had all the rules and laws to protect me.
Right.
And I have had a wonderful life in this country, but I am definitely scared now because I don't have the right color of skin, nor am I a man. And I worry about that. And that sucks that I have to.
I'm scared too. I lived in a war zone for 2 years.
Yeah.
I lived in Sarajevo, and I see the logical end of this if we're not careful.
Right. And Ken, being a straight white man in our country,
Yeah.
I want to thank you for supporting everybody else and for understanding your privilege and empathy and doing something about it. That's going to be a wrap.
There
If
you
you guys
go.
want to go, I will write up a lovely article. Just head to my blog at smartshopperdaphne.com. And if you tuned in, I appreciate you. And if, by the way, if any of you are listening and you want some more actionable items, go ahead and reach out to me at smartshopperdaphne.com. I have a lot of resources in this community that I have not mentioned on this podcast, and I want you to feel safe. And don't forget, folks, I'm Daphne Monroe. your smart shopper.